I've recently put together some trim tutorials, 10-minute videos or around 10 minutes, and you can go to my channel, my playlist, and trim tutorials and find these videos. Today we're going to trim out a laminate floor. This will not be a 10-minute video. We're not going to pinpoint one specific thing. We're going to trim out the entire floor. But before we get started, I just want to say thanks to everyone for supporting this channel, helping me out. The channel's growing nicely, the views are nice, and I just couldn't be happier. Thank you, everyone. Hi everybody, I'm Jim Deerdorf and this is Detroit DIY. Let's get started. This is the first area I want to talk about right here. When I installed this floor, this was the first piece to go in. Then everything else came in this way and locked down. So I removed this piece of case molding and I've put it back. I should have replaced it. It's a little bit beat up, but I'll take care of that. This I also removed. I've put that back. I put this door casing all back together yesterday. This is a brand new piece right here. And then my T-molding will go in there and cover that up. So what I did is I was able to remove my old floor. It was just stick down tile floor before I took any of this trim off. So I took a marker and I traced around everything so that I could get this clean look without having any gaps or spaces or anything here. And then when you come through, instead of cutting this piece of flooring square, cut it more to the contour so that you know that when you put your trim back, it will all be covered and there'll be no gaps there. Just a nice little tip. Always trace over your trim right onto the floor. When you install your laminate floor, make sure that everything is pushed back in so that when you reinstall, you won't have those problems. I had to remove this pocket door and cut the bottom of it off so that it would clear the T-mold. So I had to basically take all of this trim off. As you can see, I got a little issue up there to fix. But the latches for this door are right here, a little tough to reach. And the other one, you can barely see it right there. So the trim was in my way. I had to pull all that off. So I'll get this all cleaned up. I got a little caulking to do, a little painting to do, but we'll get that squared away. Same thing here on this side. You just want to make sure that you trace that trim on the floor so that you don't get any of the openings showing, and the same over here. No, so don't cut it square, cut it in such a way that it follows the contour of your trim a little bit. You can still have your 1/4-inch air gap and no spaces. I have all my trim pre-cut and it is also painted. I like to paint the trim before I install it. So before I put this trim on, I just want to check here and make sure that everything's smooth. I see I have a little lump of probably drywall mud right here. I'm going to go ahead and knock that off. And then I'm just going to make sure that there's no humps, nothing messing me up right there. Clean that up, we'll nail this on. We've got it setting in place now. I have no studs through here. I do have one right here. So I want to get that top nail first. Just like I explained in the videos of installing the trim, we're going to get this top nail. I have 2-inch nails loaded up in my nail gun. So there's our top nail. Now we're going to just get a couple down here at the bottom. And that is that. That piece of trim is installed. So I'm going to go ahead and get my wood putty in there right now and let that dry. I'm using a Minwax color match. This is a white wood putty. I just want to apply very little. Make sure your nails are set. Very little wood putty. I may not even need to sand that, which would be great. Next, we're going to install this little guy right here. And because this was the finished point of the floor, this is really close to not covering up the gap. But it's going to be okay. It's covered. So the only stud that's here is going to be right along here. Because there's so little drywall at the bottom, I'm not even going to put a nail at the bottom of this because it'll just tilt it. So I'm just going to use one nail right here in the stud that is installed. Now we're going to install this piece. I've got all the scruffy stuff off the wall, anything that may hold it out. So this end is just a straight cut off, and the piece that comes into it here will be coped. And I've put some tape on the wall here marking my studs, so I know I can get nails here, here, and here. The drywall's not bad at the bottom, so I'm not too worried about the bottom nails trying to turn it in. But as you can see, there's a little gap right here, so the trim will need to be pushed down before it gets nailed so that it tightens up to the floor. It's a little bit warped. So let's get started. So we know we always have a stud in the corner, so we're gonna just go ahead and push this down and get us a nail right here in the corner. We'll go ahead and push it down again, get a nail on that stud. Same thing on this stud. And finally on this stud. Now I just want to come back and nail it at the bottom right there. In between the studs, I'm going to nail it at the bottom. Same thing here. Down here. Top and bottom. And there we have it. That piece is installed. Right here I have this goofy little transition in the wall. And normally I would cope an inside corner, but in this case I'm going to use a 45. I've already taken the piece and attached it to this next piece of trim. And part of the reason I did that was because there's a weird area in the wall right here. And so I need to be able to get these to set in there nicely. Something like that. So once I nail it here, and I'll probably hit one at the bottom down here, this will flush in really nice. I just want to make sure that I'm lined up height-wise before I put a nail. So once again, I'm going to nail the top right here at this stud. I have one more stud down here. Which I missed. There we go. Now I'm going to get one right here. And one in the middle. All right. I'm going to go ahead and get a stud up a little higher, get this one up a little higher too, because it did not push in quite the way I'd hoped. And there we have it. That has turned out pretty clean. A little bit of caulk, no big deal. I probably don't even need that. Once it gets a little touch up on the paint, it'll be good. I'm getting ready to nail this piece in, and it's really no different than the others, with the exception that I left it about 3/16 of an inch long, 1/8 inch, 3/16, something like that. And what I'm going to do is nail that side first, and then I'm going to come down and push this side into place. And by it being just a little bit long, it'll bow out in the middle, but it is also going to cause a very tight joint down here. Now you don't want to leave it so long that the joint is just ridiculously tight, but you want it a little bit snug. It'll make it look cleaner. So I'm going to get this one nailed on, and then we're going to go back there. And I think that back there is where we're going to find I have a little bit of issue with the gap being too wide, and I'm going to show you how we're going to take care of that. While I was putting this nail in, actually right here, it hit a drywall screw and made a U-turn and poked out right here. So this is kind of why you never want to try and hold this trim while you're nailing it, but rather you just want to push it into place with your nail gun and keep your hands clear. If you had your hands right there, you'd be hurting right now. So I have to pull this out, and I'm going to use my multi-tool to try and help from mucking up the trim and a pair of dikes and pull it out. I hope. It's going to be stubborn. I was really bummed out when I seen this happen, but there it is. Big nice U-turn. So I'm going to patch this up and we'll get on this back. This is the area where the gap is just too big for the trim. And the reason that is because of my baseboard heat forced me to start where I didn't want to start, one, and the manufacturer didn't intend for the flooring to be installed the way that I installed it. So what happened was it caused me a bigger gap in the areas where I finished up, and as you can see, the trim just falls right in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of lattice like this, and I'm going to install my trim just like that with that lattice back there behind it, and it is going to hold it out very nicely. Yep, the trim will be on a slight little angle. As you can see, it'll just be covering it up, no problem, and everything will be fine. I have this trim caulked and I have the paint touched up. Everything is looking really good. Corner turned out really nice. It's a tight corner. I've also installed this piece back here. I am not going to caulk the top of this. It's kind of hidden. I am going to come through and touch up my nail holes. You can see one right there in the corner. I did put that piece of lattice behind the trim. You can see there's no gaps along the floor. I just wanted to touch base real quick. You can glue that on the bottom of the trim and the top of the trim and then paint it and boot the whole piece of trim out. But as I was saying, you would never know this trim is sitting on a little bit of an angle, and you can't tell. So all right, we're going to get this a little bit wrapped up, and then we're going to get in the T-molding for the door. I've got the room pretty much put back together here. Well, I need to get my freezer back in right here, but everything turned out really nice. And the reason I'm not showing any of these cuts or the caulking or anything like that is it's already on my channel. Go to my videos, playlist, trim tutorials. You're going to find caulking, you're going to find coping, you're going to find how to cut an outside corner. You're going to find all kinds of videos on installing trim. This is just some tips and some tricks to help you cover up those gaps and make your laminate floor look seamless. This is the T-molding that I'm going to install right here. It was just plain oak unfinished, and I stained it a dark gray and put 3 coats of satin polyurethane or matte polyurethane on it, so it's ready to install. I want to take this little piece and set it down in there just to see how much construction adhesive I need. I'm going to be using some Loctite PL Max construction adhesive. Probably just like 3 or 4 dabs on here, or short little beads is all it's going to take to hold this in place. So let's get this thing installed. It's going to require a fairly heavy bead to reach the subfloor. The other thing I want to say is that when you lay out your floor and you get ready to install, you need to make sure you have this stuff on hand so you can have the measurements that you need for the gap that you're going to leave behind or in between the flooring for this to fit into. Just a good way to make sure that you don't have a gap that's too big that you need to somehow figure out how to cover. Just want to make sure these are tall enough. I don't care if it smooshes out a little bit. I'll be fine with that. Alright, so this is what we got, some fairly tall beads. I'm going to get this thing slipped in there. No big deal. I like it when something starts coming together and you're getting near the finish line. That's always a good thing. And to me, it does not feel like I have good contact. So I'm going to lift this back out real quick and see what the smush is. It's decent. I don't want that to happen. Alright, I'm going to lay something on here nice and heavy to hold this in place while that tacks up, and we should have it. I've finished cutting the baseboard for the kitchen. Nothing's installed yet, but it is painted and ready to go. I've chosen 3/4 inch quarter round or true quarter round to go around my cabinet. And again, a lot of that is because of my inability to control the size of the gap that's been created here. And that's all due to the fact that I was not able to install the floor in the direction, or should I say in the placement that the manufacturer intended. So I was forced to start right over there because of the baseboard heat. Now these are things that you may not run into that I have. So due to that, I've got these gaps that are a little bit bigger because the flooring didn't go together basically in the proper direction. So I needed a 1/4 inch to get my tool in here to knock this board into place, and that resulted in a bigger gap. I'll explain that in a second. But I have this little piece of trim right here in my way, so I'm going to take my oscillating multi-tool, trim that, and then I'm going to do a little trimming down there to get that looking much tidier. So I'm just going to use this trim as a guide, nice and slow, just kind of get right on top of it. All the way through it. I'm going to do the same thing on the face right here. I'm just going to use the 1/4 round as a guide, trim through that. Nobody checking it out. Alright, Oliver showed up to help me, so now I just need to get this off of here and we'll be good to go as soon as I can see. You're not helping. this is what happens right here. He needs to help. So now that this is cut, I'm just going to chip it off of here with the hammer and the chisel. Just like that. And the quarter round should fit under it fine. Now I'm going to go ahead and get this side over here trimmed up so that my quarter round fits in there a little bit better. I have all the quarter round for here cut, fitted. I'm going to paint it before I install it. I am going to paint this the same color as the cabinet so that I think I'll get a little better blend on the floor. I think I'll like that a little better. So I'm going to go ahead and get the rest of this cut for the bottoms of the cabinets, and then we will get it installed. I just want to point out I am not using a tape measure to cut this quarter round. I'm just making reference marks. I've got this piece of trim set into place. I've got my quarter round pushed up against it, and now I'm just going to make me a reference mark right here and cut the quarter round, and I'll cut it at a 45 1/2 degrees so that I can get a nice tight fit. I'm ready to install this threshold, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to put the adhesive down in there, and then I'm going to put 3 pin nails, 2 or 3. We'll just see how it sits in, but I'll put 1 at each end and potentially 1 in the middle. So let's get this done. I have 5 areas of adhesive, which is more than enough. So I'm going to set this in there and we'll get some nails in. I have my quarter round painted and I'm ready to start installing it. I just want to focus on these corners is where I'm going to start. Once I have a nice tight corner, I'm just going to pop a nail in on an angle like this. Now that'll hold that in place very nice. Push this one nice and tight. Do the same thing. Couple nails through here. We're good. I'm going to keep installing this and we will come back and have a look when it's finished. The trim is finished. Everything's been paint touched up. I just want to kind of touch on this and touch on a couple of other things. The floor obviously raised the trim up, so I had to lower the trim here, and this is how I opted to do it. There are multiple ways I could have done this. I could have left the top profile, cut this at 22.5, cut it at 22.5 again, reduced it down the correct amount where my profile stayed, and then run it through the table saw and cut the bottom flush so that it would sit with the top profile still on the trim. I opted to do it like this. It really doesn't bother me that the top profile is not there going underneath those doors. I really like how the quarter round turned out. I did paint it to match the cabinets. My little fit right there. It looks really good. Everything is complete under the cabinets. No gaps, no spaces. Everything looks really nice. I did put little returns back in under the stove just to tidy things up a little bit. So I'm really happy with how everything turned out. That's all we got for this time. Remember, go to my channel, playlist, and trim tutorials, and you will find all the tips that you need, point-specific things to help you install your trim and install your trim like a pro did it. If you enjoyed yourself, click on one of these 2 videos. They're going to pop up right here, and we'll see you soon.